Very good morning to everybody and welcome to Design Futures Forum 2025. Yeah! 24, oh my gosh, I'm already in the future because we are talking about the future today. Thank you for that. And nothing like Tay to wake us up first thing on a Tuesday morning because of course she was the next biggest thing after our forum today that happened in Singapore this year. Thank you for joining us. I am Dawn Lim. I am the Executive Director of the Design Singapore Council. We are the organizers of every year's Singapore Design Week, and also the hosts of today's Design Futures Forum. Now, today marks the midpoint of our 11-day festival, and this is an annual affair where we shine the spotlight on good design and what it means for people like you and me, businesses, organizations, and also the nation. Many of you here who are guests who've flown in, but also our own citizens and residents, we all know and we're very proud of the fact that Singapore is globally known as a fast-paced, innovative, forward-looking nation. We made it to the list of blue zones. We are episode 4 on the Netflix documentary, just a little plug right there. Thank you. I mean, I don't take credit, but thank you, Netflix, for showcasing us. We are a UNESCO City of Design since 2015, so this is our 9th year holding that accolade. We have the world's best airport, if I should proudly say so. And also, we have the world's most creative 15-year-olds, according to this year's PISA scores. So, I think it's fair to say that we kind of know what we're talking about when we say that good design is good business, it's good government, and it makes lives better for us all. Now, this is the 3rd year running for the Design Futures Forum, and it is such an important platform for us to talk about what's happening in the world and the role that design has, the seat at the table that design needs to have in shaping the kind of future that you and I want to live in. And it starts right here. But these are such complex times that we live in, and we acknowledge that we need a couple of experts to help us unpack this. So we invited 3 experts from around the world to help us unpack 3 major themes that humanity is contending with: emerging technology, sustainability, and systems of care. And to help us with that, we have Debra Langley, Eric Chen, and Tamsin Groddick-Smith, who will take us through today. But not even enough, 3 experts, because these 3 topics, they don't stand alone. They're so intertwined with each other as well. So we decided, we'll just bring in 43 more speakers in the next 2 days, and we'll make this the largest Design Futures Forum that we've ever hosted. So I hope if you haven't got your tickets for tomorrow yet, I think we're pretty much sold out, so you might have to wait. Maybe there'll be some leftover tickets if people don't show up. So to start, we will look at emerging technology. How many of you, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but I'm pretty sure amongst our audience today, some of you went and lined up for the iPhone 16 when it was launched. Right. I had the privilege of experiencing the Apple Vision Pro full demo, 1 hour at the Apple HQ, and boy, blows your mind. Spatial videos, spatial photos. The future is already here in our hands. And to prepare us for this future, we've invited not 1, but 2 keynote speakers who will help us set the stage of what it means to still be human in a digital, AI-enabled world. Then we go for a bit of a lunch break, and we come back and we talk about sustainability. We tackle some hard truths here. Now, we've heard this term sustainability bandied around for a little bit of time now. But what does it really mean to design sustainably? And is that enough? Now, our speakers will take that on and advocate for actually more, that we need to look at regenerative futures, healing the planet, including the needs and interests of non-human life. So that's going to be quite fascinating. And then we go for a coffee break, and we come back to wrap up with the democratization of the future of care. And I think this speaks to every single one of us sitting here today. We are all human beings. We're all aging. Design is a discipline and practice of empathy, and nowhere is it more essential and evident now for us to create the kind of communities, the kind of society, and the systems that are intentional in helping us to live the best quality and life that we can. So, the Council, we are really proud to have this platform to share with you the dialogues, the knowledge that we unpack today, because we believe that design is critical to our collective future. So I thank you again for spending your Tuesday with us. So we're going to get right in, and I'm going to introduce our very first segment curator, Ms. Debra Langley, venture partner at Lyra Ventures, and she's going to open for us the emerging technology segment. Now, Debra is an experienced leader in retail, fashion, and technology, and she counsels and advises pioneering tech ventures who are reshaping future of fashion and culture. She also sits on the Innovation Advisory Committee of the National Retail Federation in the United States and also its APEC board. She serves on a few more boards, RAP, Vote Singapore, but the most important board she sits on is ours, the Design Singapore Advisory Board. And with that, please put your hands together to welcome Ms. Debra Langley. Over to you.
Thank you, Dawn, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to an extraordinary gathering at what is an extraordinary time in our evolution. We've entered a new era of industrial growth where human creativity and machine intelligence are converging at an unprecedented pace. AI technology, AI-supported technology is reshaping our world in real time, and that's why it's front and center during this program. The folks at McKinsey say that generative AI alone could add more than $4 trillion annually to the value of the global economy. And that will come not just from process and efficiency gains, but from possibly tectonic shifts in the way entire industries will work. Not surprisingly, of course, the investment community was very quick onto this, and just like 25 years ago with the internet, venture capital was quick to support AI, and you've all seen some eye-watering valuations. In the first half of this year, VCs invested more than $33 billion into AI and generative AI startups, which is 177% more than the same period last year. So what this has done is it's accelerated development to the point where AI is now doubling its capabilities roughly every 6 months. Now, the surge in investment isn't just with pure AI companies. I'm a commerce tech investor, and I see a steady stream of compelling startups, pretty much all of whom now come with a narrative around how AI will enhance their value proposition. In this context, design is pivotal because it's the bridge between the technology and the pain point or the need of the customer, whether that customer is a business, an organization, or an individual. You know, as AI expands, what we'll see is that it will take on more of the creative tasks in the process. And so designers are going to need new skills in order to thrive, particularly as it's entirely possible that they'll be asked to join what will be new design disciplines. For instance, generative AI is teaching us that how we speak and how we write actually functions as code. And in fact, David Baszucki, who is the CEO of gaming platform Roblox, he pointed out that within 5 years, we will be able to speak entire virtual worlds into existence. Exciting, right? It is enthralling to think about using some of these approaches to tackle some of the world's most difficult problems. But Amara's law reminds us that we tend to overestimate the impact of new technologies in the short term and underestimate their effects in the long term. And while I don't believe for a minute that we are underestimating AI's potential, positive potential in the long term, I think we do need to look very hard at our experience and our responses, or lack of response, to other earlier defining technologies. And of course, I'm speaking here about the internet and about social media. While these are transformative innovations, what came out of those two developments was some unforeseen and frankly pretty undesirable outcomes. And those are not going back into the genie bottle now. So my feeling is we need to get out in front of the unanticipated consequences of AI. We need to really think about what's coming at us. So even though it's really difficult to think about getting ahead of something we cannot possibly see, but I believe that it's the designers in our midst, the people who think in non-linear ways, who use their imagination, their intuition, their instinct. I think designers are uniquely qualified to envision the positive and also the negative potential outcomes of an AI-fueled future. So if they're seeing trends early, they can be very quick to design response solutions almost in real time. And what I'm saying here is I truly believe that design needs to have a seat at the table upstream, which is where safety guidelines and safety frameworks are being developed. To delve further into these themes, we have assembled an exceptional panel of speakers for you today. They'll bring us unique perspectives across industries, and they will give us their thoughts on three broad areas. The first is balancing AI capabilities with human instinct and human creativity, and how we ensure that we stay in charge. The second is, what is design's role in creating technologies that are not just innovative, but that are ethical and also responsible? And thirdly, for the designers and the design leaders in our midst, what are the skills and the experiences that will be needed for designing tomorrow, and how does one acquire these? Now, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce our first keynote speaker, Lindsey McInerney. Lindsey is a global technologist, a futurist, a scholar in residence, an educator, and the founder and CEO of Black Sun Labs. Her forte lies in guiding executives and brands to think ahead, to understand and optimize cutting-edge technologies, translating complex concepts into digestible information for the boardroom and the classroom. In 2023, Lindsey was named to the Thinkers 50 Radar List, which is a cohort of individuals whose ideas are predicted to make an important impact on management thinking. In her work with global brands such as AB InBev and Stella Artois, Lindsey has pioneered a number of global brand firsts, including the first Web3 virtual horse racing platform. Lindsey is based in London, where she lectures remotely at McMaster University in Canada, working with the next generation of innovators. She's also the co-founder and CEO of Sixth Wall, which is the digital arm of Orchard Farm Productions. This is a platform created by Hollywood actor Mila Kunis. Sixth Wall specializes in exploring the intersection of technology and entertainment. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Lindsey McInerney.
Thank you. What an incredible intro. You guys are in for a real treat today because a bunch of the folks that are speaking today met yesterday for lunch, and the conversations were extraordinary. So I'm really excited to participate. I work with brands, personalities, and people to help them understand fast-moving technology. And I've done that for the past 20 years, meaning I've seen a couple of trends before now. I did do a stint as the global head of tech and innovation at AB InBev, the world's largest brewer. And nowadays, I have the delight of traveling around the world, connecting with the brightest minds in technology, and seeing the most extraordinary developments, often before they happen and always in real time. Which means I'm always thinking about the future. And I'm not the only one thinking about the future nowadays. We're all kind of thinking about what happens next, because we've entered a pretty extraordinary era. Something that is going to be so seismic, we've never seen any kind of change like we're about to. Artificial intelligence is going to be larger and more ubiquitous than the internet, which has absolutely changed and molded and shaped society. And it's already almost everywhere. This video is from Sora, OpenAI's video creation platform. I have a lot of fun sitting around and prompting it, seeing how creative I can become and how creative it can be. I think the prompt here was something like, give me a futuristic-looking cyber dog walking through some neon city. And anyways, Sora did what Sora does, and there it is. Can we get the front of house lights for a second? I have a couple questions I want to ask you guys. Who's been thinking about AI? You know, get a show of hands. I will ask you to put up your hands. Yeah, everybody's pretty much thinking about AI. This is already a tremendous shift. Has anybody used AI? Is anybody using it day to day? How many people are actually playing and trying new things? Yeah, that's a lot. I think a year and a half, 2 years ago, that would have been almost nothing. And here we are, an incredibly short amount of time, and we've got people trying AI day to day. When I speak with people, I think one of the most interesting things is people who I would least expect to use AI, finding really cool new creative ways to embed it in their day to day. And you know, the last question I have for you guys, a room full of designers and big thinkers, is who's worried? Who's worried? I mean, I am. Admittedly, I'm worried. I think there's some cool things ahead, but I'm also worried, yeah. You're not alone. The headlines would have you believe that artificial intelligence is going to completely kill creative jobs. We're totally doomed. And you know, everybody also thinks they're an artist nowadays, right? You know, who sits next to somebody at work who's like, oh my God, look at this thing I created in DALL-E. It's a magnificent painting. And you're like, okay, sure. Like, you know, everybody thinks they're creative. And it begs the question, is creativity that dead then? Or what does creativity mean for us next? And the answer is, it's not dead, not even close. But the nature of creativity is 100% changing. And who we are as creative beings is also going to change. I want to take a step back again to talk a little bit about this, because all of this change, this technological change, is happening against the backdrop that I think is really interesting. I read this article, and I promise this talk gets a lot more optimistic in a second. I read this article in The New Yorker last year, and it actually inspired me to write an entire TED Talk. You see, I'm a humanities grad, I'm an English major, and I'm very bullish on the humanities. The way the discipline, a liberal arts degree, has taught me to think and process things, and the way I've been able to apply that to the world of technology. So I wanted to dig into this and prove it all wrong and be like, this is crazy, these stats are silly, and actually, depressingly, they were not. It turns out that humanities enrollment across the globe, so this is not just an American problem, across the globe, humanities enrollment has been down 50% over the past 10 years. And what we've kind of done is we've encouraged all young people and students into STEM-related jobs. Go be an engineer, you work at Google, it's going to be great. And while that's historically been true, all of that is about to change. Why we did that, by the way, was like for a completely honest and good reason. And I went through all of the reasons why we saw this big decline in humanities and increase in STEM-related education. And I think it's really because we love our kids. And we want them to be successful and safe and okay. And so we encourage them to get into math and science and engineering, thinking that those jobs were going to be the ones that would provide a great return on their investment, since education has become more costly and far more time-consuming to get. And yet, because of how artificial intelligence works, the safety that we used to see in those jobs no longer exists. And I would wager that we're going to see a huge influx in humanities-related skill sets on every job description. So let's talk about how artificial intelligence works for a second, and why I think that's the case, and why I'm very excited about the future of creativity in humanities. I'm going to very, very much simplify this, but I want you to think of, well, one way to think about it is to consider all of human knowledge as being contained inside a box. AI models are trained on all this information, all this data, all this giant quantity of human knowledge. And how AI works is that it takes one dot and it looks at another point in the box, right? 2 dots of human knowledge, and it generates a dot that correlates to the information contained within these 2 dots of human knowledge. Which is why artificial intelligence is particularly good at synthesizing information, data analytics, logic. In other words, it's really good at math and science, computer programming. In fact, AI is already performing in the top percentile on standardized tests in those fields. Which I want you to think about for a second. We've got machines already performing at the top level on standardized tests that we've developed in those fields. It's wild. Because of the large quantity of information and knowledge, human knowledge, that artificial intelligence has access to, sometimes it creates a dot that kind of appears new and novel, and we're excited by it, which is incredible. But I want to point out one really important thing. AI, because it only learns from this contained box of human knowledge, can only generate dots that have already been connected to human thought or human intelligence. Which means that artificial intelligence is literally inside the box thinking. Conversely, human beings, and again, I love humans, I think we have something really special going on. Because we have things like serendipity in our lives, spontaneity in how we get to behave and interact. We have lived experience. And this lived experience causes things like inspiration to happen. It allows us to be creative and think really differently. It allows our imagination to go crazy and wild. And importantly, it allows us to dream. If we get this right, and we really start to think early about how to get our head around how to partner with machines, we really have this opportunity to enter the imagination age. We all like to believe that we're wildly creative, and of course many of us are. But there are also plenty of tasks that are mundane, boring, and awful in all of our jobs. And if we learn to partner well with machines, they stand to allow us to live in that creative space a little bit longer every day, which is the space that most people describe as the very best part of what they do, the reason they get up in the morning. So while people fear that AI may mean the death of jobs, particularly in and around the creative industry, it actually stands to be the birth of creativity, if we let it. So the fact is, we were all going to have to learn to partner with AI and see it as a little bit of a co-pilot, augmenting, not automating our jobs, and allowing us to be more creative. And, Hollywood's been thinking a lot about what the heck's going to go on with AI, how are they going to integrate it, how much of the industry is going to become wiped out. And, people who are leading some of the largest studios in the world, even they don't believe that it's coming for everybody, which is great. So the question becomes, how are we going to move forward? How do we move forward in this new era? Because things are absolutely changing. Education's not going to look like what education looked like even 5 years ago. Work is already changing. We're seeing shifts globally, and we know we're thinking about how to leverage these new tools inside all of our jobs. So what does that look like? We've got 3 ideas. One of the ways I like to think about artificial intelligence is like steroids for human creativity. I love sports. I'm a big sports fan. And athletes are always looking at how to optimize their performance. Not a single world-class athlete would step foot on a big competition platform without optimizing every aspect of their performance. Nutrition, sleep, conditioning, mental preparation, of course, weightlifting if that's for you, or on ice or off ice if you're a hockey player. They're thinking about every part of how they can break down what they do into the smallest task and make it better. And so I would invite all of you to start using AI to think about how it can support you in every aspect of your game, whether it's a creative game, a design game, whatever else. If you're only using one large language model right now, you are already behind. There's many, they're all working a little bit differently. And of course, there's tons of tools that are already being developed and are already live today that can help optimize different parts of your job, designed specifically to help you with what it is that you do. This is a really new way of thinking. We're gonna have to exercise that muscle. We're gonna have to nurture it. We're gonna have to feed it and treat ourselves like world-class athletes, which means a heck of a lot of practice. The other thing I want to think about is how we start having conversations. We've talked, Debra mentioned how with other big moving technologies and other massive changes, we haven't always got things right. And we won't get everything right going forward. But something that we absolutely need to be doing right now is thinking very quickly about what comes next. I think about it a lot compared to the internet, which is probably the most ubiquitous technology before artificial intelligence ever will be, probably the largest thing that ever happened to us as humans in terms of technical change. I suppose you could argue for fire or electricity, but we'll go with the internet because I'm into tech. And we need to get people together to make decisions, right? This means that the technologists are not the best people to think about this. They're us person that needs to have a seat at the table. But we need other people. We need design thinkers. We need policymakers, we need philosophers, historians. We need big tech, we need everybody, educators, to come together and bring the best of what they do and the best of their human design to the table. Because we have a heck of a lot to learn and some pretty big things to think about before things get too far. And the last thing I really want to encourage this group and sort of remind everybody is that, you're all incredibly special. You're human. AI doesn't understand human emotion. It doesn't understand our values. It doesn't have cultural context or ethics. Despite ingesting all of our Twitter feeds, it's never been on an airplane and doesn't travel. It doesn't understand semantics or tone very well. It doesn't know how to think critically. In fact, it doesn't even know how it gets its answers. And these kinds of things, this ability to think in these ways, to feel things, to emote, to react to a person or a situation or a life in front of you, that's a very uniquely human experience. And this, along with the ability to dream, be inspired, create, and imagine, this is our opportunity. There's no better place to nurture that, in my opinion, than the humanities. So number one, make sure you send your children for an English degree. And get on airplanes, have dinner with friends, watch films and TV with no guilt. There's no guilty pleasure in reading either, consuming stories, thinking things out through fiction in a way that we don't have to live it out first, and wrestle with the impact of choices that we make in paper pages. Hold babies and go on long walks, because these are the kinds of things that artificial intelligence can't take away from us. The kinds of things that allow us to be the Shakespeares, to be the Scorseses, to have novel thoughts. These kinds of things aren't going to come out of artificial intelligence. So in summary, we need to be unapologetically human as we move forward and in this next era. Thank you very much.
Thank you for making us be feeling good about being unashamedly human. So I'm glad about that. I wanted to talk about you've spoken about imagination and using AI as our co-pilot. And I'm really excited about that partnership between us and the technology. But for every brilliant idea to do something positive for humanity, there's, oh God, I'm not looking at you all like this. I'm going to say there's a bad actor, and I didn't mean that.
No, they've been very good so far.
There's a bad actor somewhere who's going to take this technology and go, right, I'm going to create the next version of the dark web, or I'm going to create. So how do we mitigate for that?
Yeah, look, I think that's where I'm advocating that we start having conversations with the biggest and brightest minds right now. Understanding that is going to take people who are already in law enforcement to understand how these kinds of activities traditionally go. But it's also going to take them partnering with people in education and philosophy and policy and technology to really understand how nuanced some of these situations are. And so I think we really do need to start getting around tables and thinking out the very best, but also the very worst. We often are incredibly optimistic, and we need to be a little bit pessimistic on this one to cover our blinds.
So how actually are we asking designers get in a deeply uncomfortable space and think about the worst possible thing that humanity could do to humanity? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. Science fiction does this for us a lot already, which is great. I mean, I love sci-fi writers. They're always interesting conversation. And actually, that's how a lot of that's how film and television is developed in Hollywood. Where you'll get writers sitting down with law enforcement, with the FBI, with the CIA, and things like that to kind of go, all right, what's the worst case scenario that you can imagine? What's some of the worst threats that you have thwarted, stopped, that we don't know about? And, how can we build those into story? And then equally and fascinatingly, the FBI and all the law enforcement want to figure out what are the worst case scenarios that, Imagineers can dream up, and how do we stop those? And they sit down with Hollywood writers and go, right, here's a scenario we're worried about. Imagine your way out of this. Or like, how does this go really wrong? How does this go really right? And so it's this incredible thing of having creativity partnered really well with something a little bit more structured like law enforcement. And the best of both minds come to the table to come up with solutions.
So all those terrible scenarios and things like Criminal Minds are actually designers designing these scenarios.
Yeah. I mean, some of them very much are.
Okay. Do you think it's possible to create an AI safety framework?
I think it has to be possible, or we're in trouble. There's always, every tool is neutral. So for as many good things as this can do, we can also imagine how many bad things, and we're pretty creative as humans. So there's nobody that can tell me we couldn't rewind and consider how social media could be used to win and lose elections, facilitate genocide, and all the other terrible things it's done. We were just so excited about how big these platforms could become and how they connected everybody, which was incredible. But we absolutely could have foretold some of the more terrible things that have happened as well. We just sort of chose not to. So I think on this one, we really have to distinctly choose to not close our eyes and to look forward with the intent of figuring some of it out.
I wanted to ask a question that one of the audience members has posted, and I've just managed to disappear it. Thank you, technology. But basically the question was, now that we've got Chat 01 with the nascent ability to reason, does that change the narrative? Does that change your perspective?
It doesn't change my perspective. I think, you'll have different people with different takes on whether computers can reason. You'll have people with different takes on whether or not computers can become sentient, or whether that they can have consciousness, or even whether we're going to reach artificial general intelligence. And I don't think it changes anything that there is and will be something about the human condition that you can never synthesize. There will be things that feel close, there will be things that look close, and again, science fiction has taught us a lot about this, but we won't, I don't think, it doesn't change my perspective that, humans and our minds and our creativity and the way we work will always be a little bit outside the box and different than what we've created through machine.
So on that note, this question which humanities area would help us deliver the next big impact for humanity?
Ooh, I'm a big fan of a broad liberal arts degree. So one where we can take a little philosophy, a little history, a little English, and kind of bring it all together to really better understand who we are, where we've been so far as a species, and think about how we might want to, learn from some of those lessons as we enter the next era and next stages of our lives. If I had a child, I would put them in English, a broad liberal arts degree, no question.
So what's your view that, I don't know, but many parents here may or may not have pushed their children into STEM. I certainly pushed my daughter into economics and feel bad because maybe I shouldn't have done that. Oh, she did a little bit of psychology, so maybe that helps.
She's going to be okay.
Okay. So how would you, so I'm sitting here and go, Lindsey, what am I going to do? What do I do about STEM? How do I balance this? How do they choose? Probably half your class is going to comp-sci.
Yep.
So how do I make that decision?
Engineers aren't going to go away. And having a grounding in the principles of engineering and the logic and how things work in this way isn't going away. But I think what is going to change is that previously what we could develop was really based on who had the tool to be able to program. And in the future, we'll only be limited on who can imagine something or who can dream it. And so, I think engineers and mathematicians, people in these fields, in STEM-related fields, are not going away. But I think they'll be well equipped for life by learning to flex and exercise those creative muscles a little bit more liberally than we allow them to do today in the practice of learning their craft. Because the computers are going to be able to do, AI is going to be able to do a lot of that sort of grunt work for them. So the idea of how logic get together and seed these things together will be important, but as will becoming just more inspired by, life and creativity.
So taking that out a little bit further, just this question here about how do we navigate the challenges of collaboration between different teams to create solutions with AI? And I think, some of our, certainly Philipp from Grab and Jeremy from ByteDance will address this in their presentations, but you've got the engineering teams, you've got the design teams. Everybody's using different AI tools. How does that kind of collaboration, what's the best way to optimize that?
Yeah, I think, one thing we don't do well is set our teams up to collaborate. It's our best intention that we do, but we often make them incredibly competitive. And when we're creating internally competitive teams, we're actually just losing, because we're all playing for the same team. The thing that I think we need to really be focusing on is how we bring people together and incentivize conversations and behavior that isn't, that is anti-competitive, frankly. So sitting down and rewarding those things. We don't respect often what people think. The engineering team is better than the marketing team. Well, they don't work without each other. Right. And we won't come up with great solutions at this point, to a complex problem without bringing all of these different brains to the table to bring the best of what they do.
Okay, a big question here. How do we upskill ourselves as designers to remain competitive?
Ooh, who asked that one?
That's a great question. Vote it up.
That's
so
a great question.
This. Yeah,
I think, look, the number one thing that I think we can all be doing is just trying different models. Thinking about every task that we do in our day and kind of going like, is there a way that AI could support me doing this better? So I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she was talking about how she's literally asking AI to figure out what she can pair with an outfit. And I'm like, yes, Clueless, finally, the Clueless closet. But, she's kind of, that's how she's modeling her life. She's starting at the very beginning of the day and the end and kind of going, all right, if we train ourselves to start thinking a little bit more creatively about how we can plug this in different ways, whether it's writing our emails, scheduling our tasks, storyboarding, these kinds of things, bringing information together to become inspired. Research, all of this heavy lifting, and then try and get out with the different tools because they all do work a little bit differently. I think that's how we're going to stay on top of it for now, is to literally just be curious, to try, and try and plug these things in as much as we can in every instance.
So lots of experimentation.
Experimentation. So we don't have the rule book yet. We kind of don't know how some of this is going to work, which is equally terrifying, but also incredibly exciting. And so that's sort of the advantage, is that, if you think of it as your co-pilot and the virtual assistant you always wanted, what would you be asking it to do?
Thank you. Okay, so that's all we have time for right this second, but Lindsey will be joining us in the subsequent panel, so we will hopefully revisit some of these questions. Thank you again.
Thank you, Debra.
Please.
Thanks, everybody.
Our next keynote speaker is Cathy Hackl. Some of you may know Cathy. She is a globally recognized executive and futurist, a speaker who's focused on spatial computing, virtual worlds, augmented reality, AI, strategy, and gaming. She's the CEO of Spatial Dynamics, a spatial computing and AI solutions company, including gaming. She's worked at Amazon Web Services, Magic Leap, HTC, and has advised some of the world's most well-known brands, including Nike, Ralph Lauren, Walmart, and LVMH. She's spoken at Harvard, MIT, South by Southwest, Comic-Con, the World Economic Forum in Davos, and at Vogue's Forces of Fashion. Most recently, she was named by Newsweek as a top 25 visionary leader working to create the future of AI. Now, unfortunately, Cathy had a last-minute conflict and couldn't fly out to be with us. So we phoned up our friend Jan Amstutz at Beam, the holographic company, and please join me in welcoming holographic Cathy.
Hi, Singapore Design Week and Design Futures Forum. My name is Cathy Hackl, and I wish I could be there in person, but I'm actually joining you via Beam. I am here to talk to you today about designing for the future of emerging tech. We are at a really exciting moment, a season of possibilities when it comes to technology, convergence, and design. And I want to start by talking a little bit about spatial computing, which is something that I am truly, truly excited about its potential. You might have heard the term spatial computing for the first time June of last year when Apple introduced the Apple Vision Pro during their developers conference. For me, I've actually been working in extended reality and also spatial computing for the last decade. So spatial computing is an evolving 3D-centric form of computing that at its core uses AI, computer vision, mixed reality, augmented reality, and other technologies to seamlessly blend virtual content into someone's experience of the physical world. It in itself is going to change human-to-human communication, just like mobile computing did, and it's also going to change human-computer interaction. For this reason, we have been adapting as humans to technology for decades. With spatial computing, what's going to happen is that technology is going to start to adapt to us and to our physical world, and that in itself changes a lot of things. So when you think about spatial computing, we're thinking about computing expanding into the physical world. We're talking about the physical world becoming a canvas for digital information, and that in itself is revolutionary. We went from mainframe computers, these giant computers that were not very accessible, were only at universities and certain businesses, to desktop computers that were on our desks, in our offices, in our schools, but we couldn't quite take them with us. Then came mobile computing, where we were able to take iPads and phones and mobile computers with us everywhere. What's about to happen is, yes, we will continue to take those devices with us, but that data that we've been living through our phones, the rectangles on our hands and our walls, is about to expand into the physical world. So spatial computing itself is not one single technology or one single device. It is about computing expanding into the physical world. So when you think about spatial computing and you ask yourself about what are some of the use cases you're starting to see and what is the potential here for changing business and industries, I want to share an example that is a really good one. It's a couple years old, but it's really good. It's about Lockheed Martin partnering with Microsoft and using the Microsoft HoloLens, which was an early spatial computer, to actually build one of their Orion capsules, which is a capsule for the Artemis mission, which is going to take astronauts back into the moon. And basically, they use spatial computing via the Microsoft HoloLens to speed up the development process of the capsules. And what they found is that they were able to reduce the labor costs by 90%. That was huge. So labor cost and hours done, they reduced errors. That is a huge number. right? And I'm starting to see more and more of these use cases of spatial computing, like the Apple Vision Pro device, which is a spatial computer, being used to treat PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder, in veterans and different people. You're starting to see more and more ways that spatial computing is being brought into the physical world. And what is the potential here to change industries? Really, it's revolutionary. Right? When you start to think about not having to live through our phones and seeing data in the way we've seen, you're starting to see data in front of you. That kind of does two things. It makes us humans a lot smarter because we're going to have, information not just at our fingertips, but we're going to have it really in front of our eyes, and we're going to be able to interact in the physical world. And also, that's going to change how we shop. That's going to change how we interact with our offices. It's going to change how we design. I want to talk also about the relationship between spatial computing, this moment that we're going through, and generative AI and AI data capabilities. We would not be at this inflection point in computing, this new computing platform, is this new computing paradigm, if it weren't for what's happened in generative AI. Generative AI has really taken, as you know, over the headlines and is the focus of many of us, focus of how we create, how we iterate, how we're starting to design. So we wouldn't be here at this inflection point if it weren't because everything that's happening with generative AI and the capabilities that allows us to have. So this is all to mention that when you think about this new era that we're going into, you have to think about it in terms of a tech convergence. It's not just about AI, it's about AI, mixed reality, data, new cloud, 5G, 6G, all these things coming together to enable us to go into a new way of computing. So it is really important. And when it comes to AI data capabilities, I am going to be talking in the next part about new hardware, but what you need to understand is that pretty soon, some of these large language models are going to run out of data from the internet or data that has been created. So eventually, they're going to have to be able to tap into the physical world and scan our physical world in real time to get more and more data to train so that AI can truly become useful for us in the physical world once again. You're going to see in the next 6 to 18 months an explosion of new hardware types. And what you're seeing in this slide right now is actually the Orion glasses that Meta introduced just a few days ago, the holographic AR glasses that they have been working on for a decade that are truly groundbreaking because they're using light fields. They're using light fields, so this is truly starting to become holographic. Very, very powerful device that they announced. Also the Apple Vision Pro, which is trying to replace our computers. You're going to see an explosion of new hardware types trying to replace whether our computers or our phones. It doesn't mean it's going to happen in the next year or so. This is a work in the next 5 to 10 years. But the reality is that hardware, just like computing is expanding, hardware is evolving, and we're going to see new hardware types. Do you really think you're going to keep, living your life through a phone for many years? Probably not. There's going to be other ways for us to communicate better and for that data to come into the physical world. So what does this mean for designers building these products or building for these products and how your teams are going to design? Well, it's going to change, like I said, human-to-human communications. You're going to be able to communicate in easier ways through holograms and kind of collaborate in 3D designs in new ways. But it's also going to change how you start to think of the physical world. So many of you have been designing for the physical space, limited by the atoms that are in the physical space. But when you can add that data layer, that virtual data layer into the physical world, the way design changes and it expands the design capability. It expands the design function and the design careers of many. I can see especially younger generations who have been playing in gaming, have been designing worlds, porting that into the physical world. Once again, it is about the physical world becoming our canvas, right? And expanding computing into the physical world. That itself changes how you're going to design. It'll change how you communicate with your teams, how you interact, and it'll also change what you're designing and what you're designing for. So it's a really exciting moment for design. I do want to kind of not be naive and say that it's all popcorn and unicorns. I do think that there are certain things we should keep in mind when it comes to designing for this next computing platform, because if the world becomes the canvas, right, it also becomes real estate. So everything within earsight and earshot of you could become real estate. So thinking about who owns the space around you, what can they put in front of your eyes, what can you feed into your ear, into your AirPods, those are going to be considerations that you're going to have as a designer when you're creating these spaces, when you're creating these new ways of interacting with data, computing in the physical world, bringing the virtual in. So I want to leave you though with a message of optimism. I think that where we're going, this future that we're going into, we don't need dystopian narratives. We need to be realistic, yes, But we need to be optimistic about a better future. We need to be optimistic about the design function and the design careers that people had ahead of themselves, because we have to design for the better, right? I'm a mom of 3 Gen Alpha children, and the reality is that everything I do is to create a better world for them. So take this. What are you going to build now that you know computing is about to expand to the physical world, and design for the betterment of humanity? And I wish I was there once again, but I was happy to join you via Beam. And now back to you, Debra.
Our next speaker is Alex Govoreanu, and he is the co-founder and CEO of Questo, a platform revolutionizing urban exploration through interactive self-guided tours. Since launch, Questo has expanded its reach to more than 1,000 cities globally, transforming city sightseeing into energizing, engaging, and gamified experiences. Appropriately, the company has recently been referred to as a Romanian baby unicorn. Alex has been recognized as a young leader in travel by Focusrite, showcasing his influence and contributions to the travel and tech industries. At the end of Alex's presentation, he has something special for us in Singapore, so be on the lookout for that. Please welcome Alex.
Whoa, there's a lot of you here. Hello. My name is Alex, and I will tell you today how I built a platform using AI and then got called by the police to stop it. But before I get into that, I want to learn more about you guys. So now if we can go a bit to the questions. Okay, so I will be asking you to scan that and to answer these questions for me, because I want to really learn more about you guys. So first, does anyone here play any games in the real world, like Pokemon Go, Ingress? Okay. Let's wait a bit more. So I would say a bit less than half of you play real world games, which is what I kind of expected. Next question, please. Okay, now think about playing a game in the real world. How many kilometers would you guys be willing to walk for playing such a game? Fun fact here from our data, in Europe, this length is more than 3. In the US, is lower than 2. So the more people are used to walking, the more they want to walk and play. And the last and final question, please. When you think about playing in the real world, there's also genres, just like you have in movies. So if you would play such a game, what would you like it to be about? Adventure, detective, educational, or maybe a romantic game where you meet the love of your life? Okay, so not many into romance, okay. Again, a fun fact, in Europe, that works best. Here you're more about adventure. Okay, so let me go now into my presentation and tell you more about how we are transforming cities into playgrounds. First off, I was born in Transylvania, which is a real place. And I'm telling you this just because this spring I was in San Francisco and I had somebody asking me if it's true and if it's not just a work of fiction. No, it's not. It looks though like the Shire from the Lord of the Rings, just that the people are taller. But other than this, it's pretty similar. Now, I was born here, and this is an image I generated with AI, trying to show to you guys how basically I looked like when I was a kid. So I had the hair like the sun back then, now I don't have. And I received a book when I was 4 that changed my life. That was the Atlas. It's still my favorite book today. And the Atlas made me want so much to go out and explore the real world and learn about new cultures and discover new places. And when I was able to do so, when I was a bit older and traveled without my parents, arrived first in a destination that pretty much changed my life, and it's one of the reasons why I'm here. It's an island in the Atlantic. It's called Madeira. And there I stayed at an Airbnb host, an 80-year-old lady named Maria. And after 4 days, I asked her, Maria, but why do you do Airbnb? Is it for the money? And she was like, oh no, I do it because when I was young, I traveled around the world. And this is how I learned, explored. But now I'm too old to travel. So I opened my house, and now the world is coming to me. And you're the first Romanian that I meet, and now I learn about your country. This is why I do it. And that was so powerful for me. And happily, not short after, I was in Rome in another trip, and enjoying the pizza with, in the picture there is my wife. And I had an epiphany that moment because we had an amazing experience all that day in Rome. And right here, what I'm saying in the messages, and Philipp, you probably understand, it's a bit of Romanian, I'm saying that the chef is flirting with my wife. And for the previous 4 days, I was having the worst day in Rome because I was just following everyone around, crowded, expensive, not the exploration I wanted. You know, my favorite book is the Atlas. I wanted to be a conqueror. I wanted to be an explorer. But I was just following other people around. And then I ended up in this pizza place having an authentic Italian experience with an Italian guy being Italian with my wife. And my wife said, is this what you wanted? And I said, exactly. This is how I imagined it to be. I wanted to be authentic. So then I tried to build a platform for this, for allowing people to be explorers and get into these authentic experiences. Fast forward to today, we build a Questo world. Questo is a platform where you basically go out there and you play games in the real world. And every game allows you to be whoever you want to be. You can be Sherlock Holmes in London. You can be a detective in New York. You can be Einstein in Zurich and learning about the general theory of relativity. Now, our users, our players, they play Questo not just because they want to go and find a new place or learn a new story. They do so because maybe they love the Wizard of Oz and they want to get dressed up as Dorothy and explore their cities, and they think about their city as being actually the land of Oz. Or they want to just spend nice quality time with their kids, because it's one of the very few things where you actively spend time with your kids. Imagine when you go and watch a movie with your kid, you just watch a movie. It's not like you do something with the kid. But when you play Questo, you guys have to work together to solve challenges and puzzles in the city. And that's a much more better quality time that you can spend. Now, let's talk a bit about how you design such an experience. How do you design a product that offers experiences in the real world? Well, you have to follow a couple of steps. First, you have to understand the people for whom you are building, your users. They are travelers and they are locals. So different moments when they explore, different needs, different settings, they want different things from you. Then you have to understand a bit, okay, I want to build something new, I want to design a different experience, but what are they using now? Well, in our research in the early days, we learned that they are using audio guides, all sorts of apps that show you routes, or maybe some more developed apps that give you routes, but also some stories on top. And then you have to discuss with users and to research and to wonder if this is enough. And the answer is that really it's not. People, they don't want to just go from one place to the other. Or, let's put it differently. For hundreds of thousands of years, we have explored this world. We went from one place to another, and then we discussed something, and we said, wow, I did this, I discovered this new piece of land, this thing. You had that sense of ownership on something. Now just following an umbrella around in a group, it's not as fun. So it's about creating an amazing experience in the real world. How did we choose to do this is by combining storytelling and gamification, by using the power of imagination and allowing you to be the character that you love in a city, with gamification, by using all those game mechanics that keep you hooked on all your games, but even on the apps that you use, all those viral mechanics. Who is building these games? Is it me? Is it a bot? Well, in the early days, it was me. But then we opened the platform for creators. And the creators that were first building inside of Questo, they were copywriters, they were screenwriters, they were the people that were very good at storytelling. However, AI then appeared. And it massively changed the game for us in a so positive way that I cannot even describe for you guys. Here in the picture, you have one of our earliest creators. Her name is Linda. She's from Scotland. She's a retired TV producer at BBC. So not the type of creator I would ever imagine I would have in Questo. Linda, she first built a game just using text. So if you would have played her game, it was just some text, and all the visuals were provided automatically by our system. But what she did was just text. And then Gen AI appeared. And she was able to level up her game to such an extent that you would not think it's the same game anymore. She used McInerney to create all sorts of visuals, helping you to immerse yourself into the experience that she was providing. Because up until then, you were just reading a book, but without any visuals, without nothing. And then she was able to use Gen AI to show you, to help your imagination, There's a very nice quote that I love from Steve Jobs. He was trying to describe the computer, saying that it's like a bicycle for the mind. Well, I think AI is like, a plane for the mind. A motorbike is much more powerful, but it augments everything. It helps our imagination go crazy. Now, creating experiences in the real world is a totally different animal. It's challenging because it depends on the real world. It's much more prone to mistake if you want. But Cathy was discussing earlier here about how we can use AI for the physical world to augment it. And this is what our creators are doing now. Our travelers, our locals, they are now becoming explorers with Questo. And the timing cannot be better. We are a bit contrarian on this, because in an increasingly virtual world where we discuss only about AR and VR and plugging ourselves into all sorts of things, what we basically want to do is to take the real world, add a layer on top of it, which will be boosted, if you want, by your imagination and AI, and help you to spend real quality moments in the real world with the people that you love, with your partners, with your friends, and create awesome experiences. So yeah, we are here to build the world into a much more happier place, and for this we are using AI. And for all the wrong things that you can think about that AI can be used to, my bet is that it can be used to also create amazing experiences for everyone out there. Now the surprise is that we have the Oz game, one of our most popular games, launching in Singapore this weekend on Saturday, I guess. And if you guys scan this code, this QR code, it will direct you right onto the page of our website where you can book the game with, I think, 98% discount, because Stripe doesn't allow us to do 100%, but a 98% discount. So thank you very much, and wish you a lovely day.
Thank you, Alex. I hope you'll play this game on Saturday. Look forward to seeing you all out there. Just a note to the parents, aunties, uncles, and maybe educators in the audience. Questo is actually working with some UK schools to help senior students build games around a narrative that they create. And this is with a goal not only to help them to design an experience, but also to see if they can monetize something, maybe as a side hustle, correct? Okay, so something also to think about for us. My next speaker is Philipp Kandal from Grab. Who all took a Grab here this morning? Me. Okay, there's your audience, Philipp. Philipp is the Chief Product Officer at Grab, where he oversees product design and analytics, driving the product vision and strategy to enhance user trust and satisfaction. Philipp joined Grab in 2019, initially leading the engineering and data science teams for the Geo vertical, which focuses on location-based intelligence. His leadership in this area led to the launch of Grab Maps, an enterprise service addressing hyperlocal mapping needs in Southeast Asia. Before joining Grab, Philipp co-founded Scobler and served as its CTO until its acquisition by Telenav. He has more than 20 years' experience in technology, engineering, and data science. Welcome, Philipp. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, looking at the arms race, we'll definitely need to work on getting a bunch of more of you into Grab. So there's definitely work left to be done, but hopefully by the end of this talk, I'll convince you all to use a Grab back home in the evening. Anyway, it's really an honor to be here today and talk today about the role of the designer and how we see that at Grab and how we see that evolving as the complexity is continuously increasing. Also, for those of you who haven't raised your arms and are not familiar with Grab, let me start with a quick introduction. Grab started 12 years ago in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia with a goal to make taxi rides safer in Malaysia. Today, we've become the leading super app in Southeast Asia, which 1 in 20 people in Southeast Asia use every month to book a ride, order food, or process digital payments. Our footprint has expanded from 1 city to 8 countries and more than 700 cities across Southeast Asia. And I'm proud to say that as of last quarter, we've achieved 41 million monthly transacting users. But more importantly for us, this means 41 million lives revolutionized by urban mobility and digital services. And our design team plays an extremely central role in bringing that vision and mission come to life every day. We are thinking about design holistically, across a wide spectrum of responsibilities. And our designers are deeply embedded into the empowered teams that solve real customer problems every day. And as I'm sure many of you have seen, our app is evolving every single day. We're launching new services, enhancing existing services. So one of the core roles of our designers is to make our service easy and intuitive to use every day. So let me dive into an example. This is the Grab homepage, and we have been experimenting with a single-page navigation to evolve the homepage to a space where users can find relevant and personalized content and help them to complete a transaction online or offline. So that's something where we've envisioned for quite a while. And based on this, the team had an initial hypothesis and an experiment. So this is the first version of our single-page navigation that you can see. Right? It creates a lot more space basically for the content and for discovery and for finding serendipitous things that you normally wouldn't expect to find. But the team was very quickly through the data learning that something important was missing. And then we launched a second version because the users, they really liked the search bar that was available. Right? Search is such a core part of our experience. And in the earlier version, we put it up there, and then we put it a lot more central. And that has really led to us by experimenting with real users and getting feedback. So this gives you a taste that our designers are highly data-driven, right? They come up with an hypothesis and they test it. And they require system thinking in their work every single day. In the past, a newly minted designer at Grab, they might have looked at a single service and built that, but now they need to look across interconnected services. For example, for the homepage, this means they need to achieve consistency and coherence across all of our different verticals, such as ride-hailing, food delivery, and payments. And whatever we design here needs to work across. And this poses a significant challenge for the user experience in such a complex system. Anybody making a change to the food homepage, they would need to consider how does it impact the transport homepage. So this is one of the examples of how we see the role of the designer evolving in a data-driven world. Now let me talk about a technology that has been mentioned a lot earlier and that I'm personally extremely excited about and which I think will profoundly revolutionize all of our lives. So most of you have probably seen the multimodal capabilities of large language models. And for me, this was like magic. Once computers can talk, once computers can see, this is a profound change how we're interacting with computers. Obviously at Grab, once this got released, our design team was immediately thinking, how can we integrate these AI capabilities into the Grab app? And the team was super excited about the potential, but as important for designers, they come back with the question, how does this really serve our user? Designers at Grab, they need to ensure that technology serves the user and not that the user serves the technology. So we thought about what is the real problem this can solve? One group that instantly came to mind for us was visually impaired people, which unfortunately, honestly, don't have the best experience using Grab today. And we are a very mission-oriented company, so we immediately sprung to action and see how can we use those capabilities to make the lives better for those people who need it most. And we did what we always do. We got a bunch of people in to come and tell us about their experience, because that's the only way for us to learn. Initially, our design team had a hypothesis to use the visual capabilities for LLMs to help these users and guide them to their pickup point. But the reality was, once we talked to these users, we learned actually the problem starts a lot earlier. Using screen readers on Grab proved very difficult and error-prone. And for our designers, it's important to deeply connect with users and have empathy to understand where their problem is. And that is especially in a data and AI-driven world true. So once we learned that, we saw immediately the opportunity. This is our booking flow. And if you imagine using this with a screen reader, it's super complicated. So they thought, how can we pivot instead of helping them to the pickup point, which we might do at a later point? How can we use AI voice capabilities to break down the complexity and build a simple user-friendly experience? And we have the unique opportunity at Grab to work closely with OpenAI as their lighthouse partner in Southeast Asia. So we got early access to some of this amazing capabilities that they've built. And that's exactly why we've been able to push the boundaries and lean on each other for that. But let's imagine that, right? How does the journey of a vision-impaired user using voice command to book a ride look like? And many, many challenges are there that we found. For example, how will the user even find the entry point to that voice mode? That's the first challenge we run into. How do we synchronize the voice input and the AI answer in a manner that is coherent and flows naturally? Or how can a user correct any errors? Voice is prone that you once in a while get a misdetection, and how do we ensure that a pickup point is correctly selected? Right, many questions that our design team asked early on. And more importantly, how do we ensure that a user with vision impairment receives the same service and capability as able users? And due to the unpredictability of LLM-based solution, we encountered many, many challenges. And for designers, it requires a super close collaboration with engineering, analytics, and all of our teams, because we can't do with visual prototypes. We need to have usable prototypes we can test. So we go from static prototypes to real working versions. And that's a radical change how designers need to work today and how we need to adapt to emerging technologies. So our accessibility pilot is one of many examples that uses this new technology while bringing together a cross-functional team. The team built a first version within weeks and began reaching out to vision-impaired users in order to get in-depth feedback. And the challenges quickly emerged, right? I've shared you some of the things that we imagined people would have, but the reality, as always, is very, very different once you put stuff in front of real users. Right? One thing we see, our LLMs would randomly switch languages. Why would they do that? Well, if you're familiar with Singapore, some street names are in Bahasa, Hokkien, or English. So they think the user speaks to the system in Bahasa while they're merely quoting a street name. And then the LLM, entirely unuseful, responds to you in Bahasa or in Hokkien. So this is a huge problem. The second thing which we learned is actually people with vision impairment, they used to have their audio on average 2x speed, something that my mind cannot process, but they have been trained to use their screen readers so fast, they were saying oh yeah, Grab's super slow, yeah? Our normal audio mode was so slow that they couldn't wait for it. They were getting super impatient. So we needed to tune up the speed, which is tuned for these users, right? So we learned to be faster. And the other thing is while we thought earlier about finding an entry point as a challenge, the other big challenge was also people would want to switch in and out of that mode as they're waiting for their ride. So it's not that they want to get in that mode, book there, and stay there, but they want to go back to other parts of the Grab app while they're waiting for the car to arrive. So this is just some of the things that we've encountered testing with real users. And while it's early day and it's still a prototype, we're incredibly bullish on rolling this out to our users, as well as bringing this to more services. And hopefully this gives you like a view of like some of the cool things we can do. So the key learning here is it requires constant and close collaboration across design, product, analytics, engineering, to really train these models and make them adapt to our users' need, and then ship and iterate quickly. That requires our designers to have a high degree of system thinking, collaboration, and user centricity. In conclusion, designers at Grab are problem solvers and seek to find innovative solutions to customer and business problems every day. The designers need to be a core part of the product team and need to be along for the journey and have the space to push boundaries and bring a customer-centric view to the table. It's impossible to see what exactly a designer needs to do in the next decade, but one thing I'm sure is they need to be skilled in the visual craft, data literacy, technological fluency, system thinking, as well, very, very importantly, empathy. So the designers for us need to understand the creative and analytical sides of their work. The speed, honestly, with which AI is evolving and breaking records every week is a stark reminder to all of us, not just designers, of the importance to stay agile and nimble. Instead of being worried and concerned about the rapid change, I'd like to invite all of us to embrace the complexity and innovation. It offers so many opportunities to learn and grow and impact the lives of millions of people every day. That's why I'm getting to work. If you're excited to that, please come join me at Grab. Thank you very much.
For our panel, I'm really pleased to add one more guest, Jeremy Ng from ByteDance. Jeremy is going to join us, give us a little bit of an intro into ByteDance, and I have a couple of questions for him, and then we'll get into it with the rest of the panel. Jeremy is a prominent figure in the Singapore tech sector. Since 2023, he has been the Director of Global Technology Alliances at BytePlus, which is a ByteDance company, where he leads conversations with key partners in APAC and EMEA around data and machine learning capabilities. Jeremy is also actively involved in other initiatives. He is the honorary treasurer and previously exec committee member for the cloud and data chapter of SG Tech. He is also an advisor to startups, one of them in my portfolio, and serves as the chairman of the Artificial Intelligence Subcommittee at NTU. Jeremy, can you first give us a quick overview of this incredible entity you work with?
All right, first of all, thanks, Debra, for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. Yes, ByteDance. I think most people will only know TikTok. We're definitely more than just Gen Z dancing videos. In fact, we run at least a dozen different businesses globally. What you see over here is just some of them. We've got news aggregators, short video platforms, social media platforms, e-commerce, you name it, mostly on the consumer side. But most recently, we have also started branching into the B2B world. So we have about 150,000 employees worldwide. We've got 5,000 here in Singapore. When I joined, it was just a couple of hundred of us. We right now manage more than 2 billion MAU across the world. And this is quite a tremendous feat over the last 10 years. The growth has been extraordinary. And what I spend primarily most of my time right now is to build BytePlus. This is the new B2B arm of ByteDance, where we start to commercialize a lot of our internal technologies that we've built over the last 10, 12 years. We're talking about our recommendation engine, our advanced computer vision algorithms, audio intelligence. That's where we are starting. Debra, I can go on, but I reckon I'll pass the time back to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. We just heard from Philipp about the relationship between the data people, the designers, the developers. What's that like at ByteDance, and how does that impact how you research products, build them, and bring them to market?
Right. We are, like Grab, we are an extremely data-driven company. Everything we do is precisely designed based on data. So for example, we run 7,000 different digital experiments a day. That's every single day across the 2 billion in monthly active users across the world. Every piece of design that we have in our applications are highly engineered. So the font type, your color, your screen size, the weightage between latency and resolution, everything is highly tested. And we sort of let the market decide what is really needed for every product. And data analytics and product design is closer together than ever before. I think Philipp can attest to that together with the rest of the panel. This is something that we see merging in many, many roles in tech companies. The iteration for design is now shorter and shorter. It allows us for executing micro adjustments to designs on a daily basis. And in fact, in different geographies, localization is involved. All that at scale. So I think where design is going in a global company like ours is where experiments are pushed out extremely fast at scale. Designers will have to figure out how this can be done at a very, very fast pace moving forward.
So looking ahead, how do you see the role of the designer changing with access to, I feel like every day there's a new Gen AI tool. Cathy talked about Spatial and how she believes that's going to be such a driving force for development. What do you see the role of the designer at ByteDance looking like with access to all of that and whatever you can talk about?
Right. So I think I'll take this to a little broader industry sense. Where we see things going is the humanizing of technology, right? In the past, we see text-heavy UI. We see cumbersome kind of interfaces. That will soon be things of the past. Where we see things going, especially, I mean, not just ByteDance, but most of the industry, it's gesture activation, voice intelligence that's coming in to help platforms and tech products become ubiquitous, merged with physical realities. So this is where I think much of the work will happen. In some parts of the world, we are already seeing in-car systems with LLMs, where you can order your food before you get home, make sure your AC is on, at the same time check your CCTV to see if your e-commerce parcel has arrived. So that will be more and more prevalent in the world. And I think the next stage for designers will be to figure out how all these emerging tools will be complementary, not interruptions to our daily lives, as some of them still do. So yes, I do see that as the future moving forward.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. Could we put the Slido back up so the audience can ask additional questions? I'd like to turn to the rest of the panel with a question that has surfaced time and time again, and that is, when someone develops a really complex prompt to generate a particular output, and the output is highly sophisticated or very, very creative, is that person still considered a designer? And Philipp, I'd like to ask you first if you could respond to that.
Yeah, so I think ultimately the process of design is like leveraging creativity, right? Like, so in our case, the way that our designers use LLMs, I would certainly say they're a designer by using that, right? Like they're testing many systems, understanding the boundaries, understanding which model to use, maybe fine-tune the models. So that is definitely for me creativity and design work hence. But if I use a LLM with like a simple prompt, like imagine a kid on the beach, that's probably not like a creative design work. But like you talked a little bit about that not everybody using this tool magically becomes a designer, even they think they are, right? Like, so I think there's clearly like it depends on the sophistication and the effort you put in. But if you draw an analogy in the past, right, like when digital cameras or cameras came around, there was like this age-long debate, like, oh, can this still be art if you make a photograph, right? Like it really depends, right? Like not every photograph you create is a piece of art, but certainly I assume like most people now would agree that some photographs certainly are a piece of art and creative work, right? Like, and I think the same is true with LLM. Not every output of an LLM is like a super creative process, but some certainly can be and require a lot of sophistication and creativity.
Lindsey is an educator and also a futurist. Do you have a similar or a different point of view to that?
No, I think that's an incredible summary of exactly that. We will, as designers, they will end up having to adopt these tools just like they have in any other era, whether it was, figuring out pens and paper and drafting paper and computers and everything else. This just goes in the toolkit, and how a designer wields that tool is going to be totally different than how I do or how actually anybody on this panel will based on their job.
Thank you. I think I'm looking at the questions and also the questions I had around, I think the audience is very concerned about, it's all very well to experiment, but what exactly are the tools and the experiences and the skills that they're going to need in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years? Alex, can you give us a point of view?
Imagination, I think, is one. The moment you stop imagining things and building things in your head, you are doomed, I think, in the future. So, look, if we are to use these AI tools, we have to know what to tell them to do and how to help us with. So yeah, you have to create it in your mind first. And you have to, I think, be super flexible in testing all of them, not stop at one. So you will be using all sorts of tools like ChatGPT for coming up with answers to your questions, but then you have to use Sora to generate videos, then you have to use MidJourney to create a lot of visuals for your work, and there's going to be plenty, a billion that I cannot think of today, so you just have to be very open. So yeah, open and try to have imagination is for me key.
Anybody else?
Yeah, maybe one thing I would like to add. What I'm really excited is any technology that comes around starts in a phase which is called the skeuomorphic phase. We try to imitate what happened before, right? Like if you look at the early iPhones, all the note-taking app looked like a notebook, right? Like if you look at the first cars, they looked like a horse carriage, which is not the best way to design a car, right? And in AI, I think we are right now in the skeuomorphic phase, and I think people are starting to learn what really powerful new things you can do to the tools, right? Like in the past, we were always thinking, what can we replace that we do right now with AI? And let me give you one example that I've seen, that AI is an incredible tool of education. So I have an engineer in my team that quit and wanted to be a novel writer. And that guy has not an English major, right? So this guy is not like a professional novel writer. But he would talk to the AI and teach himself to become a novel writer. And he actually wrote an accompanying heavy metal song, right? So, it's incredible. And the guy has launched the fantasy novel, and it's been a top 20 Kindle release when he put it out. Right? It's been pretty good, right? So the guy's no more an engineer, so it's a loss on my team. But the guy's now an accomplished writer by its own self. And he said what AI helped him, it was not to write for him, but it was a sparrings partner for him. He would ask it stupid questions. One thing we've been all taught in school, if you've been pupils, what don't you do with a teacher? You don't ask a stupid question. Well, we don't ask human stupid question because it makes us seem stupid. Nobody is worried to ask a stupid question to an AI because nobody cares what the AI feels, right? So at the end of the day, that is kind of new things, right? He would have never hired a human to teach him how to be a fantasy writer and how to write a heavy metal song, right? And those kind of things, right? We have released some of these AIs to our merchants and our drivers, and what they do with it is incredible. Some of that we are not quite prepared, right? Our merchants ask our AI, how do I quit smoking? And okay, great question. Maybe we are not the right place to come for that now, but who knows, right? And that's, I think, this people understanding and pushing the boundaries on doing things you could never do in the past technology paradigm. This is the same thing, right? Grab emerged in the paradigm shift on iPhones and of mobile phones, right? Like, and people would not use that the first 1 or 2 years, and then like all these services like Grab, Uber, Airbnb popped up. I think that's what's happening in the next 1 or 2 years with AI, that these new experiences that we're just now starting to imagine will come up.
So do you give, and this is for the business leaders in the audience, do you advocate, let's give these AI tools to all the teams and just go, have at it?
I would definitely, I would say give everybody that, but not like have at it and do whatever you want. There's definitely some risks that I acknowledge that. But I think, right, like the line that you quoted, right, like there's a version of that. I firmly believe that humans are not going to be replaced by AIs, but humans empowered with AIs are certainly going to replace humans that refuse to be empowered by AI. So I would say yes, everybody who's not using AI right now, I think is putting themselves in danger.
So Jeremy, do you find that there are designers at ByteDance who are starting to color outside the lines?
Oh, definitely. I think this is not just happening within the tech companies, right? I mean, even in companies in traditional fields, they have to start thinking. One of the things I personally am excited about is multi-agents, voice-activated multi-agents. Imagine we have been interacting with people by speaking, but that is still far behind in terms of progress in the way we work with intelligence. So that's actually what's keeping me most excited about, where you have intelligent platforms that can integrate into all sorts of workflows. You do API calls intelligently, all voice activated. That's where I think the future will probably have some footing there. Yeah.
I like that. So, Lindsey, I want to ask you, you're working with business leaders and with students. What are you seeing is potentially, or are you seeing any blockers in the way that they are using these tools, or stereotypical, are the business leaders a bit reticent versus...
Totally. Okay. The young people are going to be fine. The young people are always fine. They're the last folks I'm worried about. I love Gen Alpha, I love Gen Z. They're brilliant, they're smarter than all of us, and they're going to save the planet. The people that are having the hardest time figuring this out and adapting, which shouldn't shock anybody, is like people who've functioned differently for the past 20, 30 years in their careers. Leadership is a skill that we're afraid to give away. It makes us feel very powerful to hold it and to have it. And actually with large language models, we all get to be leaders. I mean, as we're leading these little tools in our pockets or on our phones or in our, on our desktop. And we've taught people to be order takers, we've taught them to follow the rules, to follow their boss, and that's not going to work anymore because you need people who do not think rigidly, to prompt things and to dream and imagine about different ways they can get solutions out of them. And we're really going to struggle to let that go, and to say, all right, try a new tool, try a new way of doing things, and be a leader in your area of work. I think we're really going to struggle with that.
Do you think there's a way to use AI to actually teach leadership, or is that one of those?
Totally. I mean, we all use email now, and 20 years ago, nobody thought that would happen. I mean, there will be some of the workforce that is phased out that frankly never gets it, and they're on the verge of retirement at this point anyways. And there will be others that learn to use it really well in their cohort. But the fact is, just like Gen Z know how to use the internet better than any of us, AI will be used way better by Gen Alpha and Gen Z, and we'll be learning from them much. I really think we need to learn a lot more from the younger generation. We do very well to look downstream and learn a lot from younger folks.
Can you raise your hand if you're Gen Z?
I thought you raised a hand.
Yeah, a couple. It's great.
It's a very small percentage. You've got to go out and bring your friends in next year, okay? We're low on Gen Z. This is a question that has been voted up high. What excites you most about AI development in the coming 1 to 2 years? And what worries you most? Alex?
For me, it's video. I just want to see more to be done with video. And I think I'm also biased by Questo and what we are building, but I think video is going to be so disruptive and close to magic in many ways. I get there will be many
potential problems. But yeah, I'm super excited about video.
Lindsey.
I think probably the thing that worries me the most is not pausing to slow down progress, but pausing to think about some of the larger implications to people. I think I see people, organizations making really hasty decisions. Oh, our entire customer success team can be replaced by AI, and I think that's foolish. I don't think we're there yet. I think people are overestimating, in some cases, what things are going to look like in the next 2 years. You talked about that in your opening, right? We overestimate a little bit, so I think we'll make some hasty choices there that we shouldn't, and that concerns me.
Philipp?
I think I talked about the multimodal world of AI. I think that is like really, really exciting for me. I think there's a lot of potential. I think we'll enter a world where computers will see, hear, and interact with the real world. And I think that'll bring a profound change on how will be the relationships we build with computers.
Jeremy?
I think it's all about it's thinking about guardrails a little more seriously. And yeah, that's a whole other topic. Yeah, but that's where I think most concerns should be centered on.
But is there anything in the conversation around AI that you find frankly terrifying? Or am I the only one who kind of goes...
I think it's terrifying that we haven't figured out who and what should regulate this, and I don't have the answer. Right now we're trusting sort of very similar looking people, frankly, to build these things that we trusted to build, all of the social tools that we have. And we had some huge problems with the way those were built. We're still suffering them. We still don't actually know how to manage social in the way the internet sort of operates today and its impact. And so I think it's completely alarming that things are moving as fast as they can, and you can't really slow down progress.
Right.
We don't really want to slow down progress, but I do think it's alarming that the people at the top of those companies look really similar to... It's very homogenous. It's very homogenous, and I think that's scary.
I did have an earlier question. We do have time. The money, sitting in venture capital, I see enormous sums of money going to funding an increasingly, it seems like, small number of companies. Because really, to build AI, it takes significant funding. Do you see a tension between the money going to these entities that need to deliver shareholder value and the need to create AI that is fair, equitable, and responsible? Lindsey?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. One of the questions I left my class with, or we just debated in my class this summer at the University of McMaster in Canada, was kind of exactly that problem, but with the internet. What would have happened? So when the internet was founded, it was founded publicly, right? It was government funded, and then it got so big and out of control. The government went, we don't actually know how to manage this. We don't have the resources to manage this. Make it public and let the public companies deal with it. And that's done incredible things for the speed of innovation in the internet and who gets to access it, and also some less good things. And when we talked about, what would have happened if the internet was more like a public service, like water or like electricity, in how electricity is operated in many countries, and what would it look like if it was like that? And I think those are the questions we should be posing now with AI as well. Who should own this? It's going to change the face of humanity. Should it be governments? I don't know. There's some scary things if you walk down that path. Should it be the public companies? Some pretty terrifying things when you're just motivated by capital, to your point. And there's likely, a more blended approach that's needed. And again, this merging of the minds and coming together. We don't have all the answers.
Philipp, I know you're a publicly listed entity. Do you have a personal view that you could share?
I think my personal view, you're right, there's a few entities, but there's still very healthy competition in this space, where you have OpenAI, you have Anthropic, you have Meta. So I think there's a good amount of competition that no single entity can dominate that space that I'd be very worried about. And I think also, I've been a lifelong open source enthusiast, right? So there's a bunch of really good open source models that people can tweak, right? I think one of the things that's emerging, how you train the AI system, if you want to have it politically left-leaning, right-leaning, whatever your preference is, and if this is your primary tool, how you think,
if that is trained in a certain way, that will certainly impact you. So I think two things that I'm really excited about is one is the level of competition that gives people choice. And the other thing is like open source AI that gives people the ability to tune it, right? Like, I mean, even we at Grab, like we tuned AI so many of our use cases and so on. And that's, I think, incredibly important that people develop the literacy, what AI system to use and what to expect, right? Like same as your different media companies that lean in different directions. I would say the same you see with different AI models that lean in different direction. So maintaining that for me is super crucial.
Do you want to go? Okay, let's move on. I guess there's a few parents and educators in our audience, and the question is, in your view, what should educators in schools do with children 7 to 16 to ensure that they're prepared for tomorrow? Let's start with you, Alex, because you do have that school program.
That's what I was thinking about. I would encourage parents. I have a 4-year-old son, so it's a bit earlier for me, but I will do so as soon as it's time. I would want my kid to interact with AI and to know how to use these tools, because as you said, he will probably in the first years already know it better than me. I think it's crucial because at the same time to what you said, they will ask questions. You know, questions that maybe I don't know the answer to, or maybe they just don't want to question me. And yeah, expose them to that, let them build, be there for them, and try to, I don't know, maybe build some systems that keep him safe at the same time, because I get it can go haywire, but by all means, you should not stop kids of using AI tools. That's a must, because for me, as I said during the talk, the AI is like a plane for the mind now. You know, it's more massive, and it will be much more massive than the internet was, just because, again, to what you said, if it can sense, if it can feel it, if it can understand you and have the awareness of whatever is happening there, it's so much powerful. It's like a god in your pocket. So why should you not use it? It doesn't just make any sense.
Jeremy, you have a 3-year-old, so this is pertinent to the way
Absolutely.
you see her future.
Absolutely.
What do you want to see in her school?
So my wife is also an educator, so we think about this all the time. And with the pace of change of the education space, I think it goes deeper right now into what makes us human, right? So I think 7 to 16, those are foundational years where they build their belief systems. I think the world moving forward, we have to have kids with very strong self-esteem. How much grit do they have, right? They have all these tools in the future to help them learn way faster than we ever did, right? It's now thinking about what are the right questions to ask. Are there questions that are relevant in their context? So I think it's training children to think independently and have those systems in place. Yeah.
So relevant to that is a follow-on question here, which is, what are some skills that will be less important tomorrow? Lindsey.
Yes, I think those not monotonous. Some people maybe really enjoy them. I've never been great at math. I've never been much of a programmer. I think some of those, sort of more basic tasks or tasks that allow us, large language models, to lean into big data and help create solutions really simply. I think those are some of the ones that we'll be able to lean away from. And then, it's those big ideas. How do you become incredibly inspired all the time to come up with, be able to lean into that creativity a little bit harder in the day-to-day.
But when does that start? Is that like 3 or 4?
Oh gosh, that's early. It's incredibly early. My friend Shauna, who's actually here, she just had a baby, and he's 11 weeks old here in Singapore.
That's early.
It's early. And we were talking about that, right? Like, this kid is going to grow up in a world that's never not known AI, right? Like, he's gonna know nothing about a world without AI. Similar to how there's a whole generation that doesn't know a world before the internet. And I think it's the hardest job in the world to figure out how to parent kids through technology, because, to your point, you don't want to start them too late. because you'll be crippling their ability to sort of learn with their peers and leverage technology they'll need in the workforce. And also with the internet, we learned that there's a lot of not so great things about using too much technology and too early. And this isn't a technology that we know a heck of a lot about yet. We haven't been able to imagine all the impact. And so I think, I love watching my friends' kids use like Alexa, right? Listen to them use Alexa. Because they think of so many more interesting things to ask Alexa to do for them, to solve for them, to reply than I would ever think of. And so in a lot of ways, I think sort of the earlier the better, with some oversight, to make sure that while we're still learning in real time, things don't get carried away. I think there's a lot of parents that wish they provide a little bit more oversight on the internet before they just let their kids go with an iPad.
To build a bit on this, what I do on the weekends now, pretty much every weekend, my son, he's amazingly curious. And what I had the realization a couple of months ago was that when I was a kid, I think I was curious as well, but I was limited to the knowledge of my parents and of my grandparents, So I probably had a lot of questions, but I just go to them and they would be like, I don't know, what's with this question, Go and play, But now whenever my son comes, either I know the answer to that, or either I say, okay, let's just sit on the couch, I take ChatGPT, and I ask it, and we learn together. And sometimes from all of his questions, I learned, and I'm happy about it. And giving him the opportunity to live in a world with endless answers and endless questions, I think is super powerful. I didn't have that. I'm so happy that he has that.
So do you think then that looking out, we will have AI tools in every classroom?
Yeah,
definitely.
Everywhere.
Definitely.
Because, there's this debate about you need to test if someone has used an AI tool to develop their papers, and that's a negative. But if we don't give our children access to these tools, they're so disadvantaged when they leave school and everybody else knows how to use these tools. Philipp, when do you think it should start that you introduce AI into the classroom?
I think super early. Right? I've gone through a German education system, and I still have dates about every ancient Greek event etched in my brain in World War II, and I don't think I'll ever need them, but I'll never get them out to free up space for something more useful, unfortunately. So I think what we need to do is, it's very odd when you say we need to test them for something. I think what we need to test kids is about critical thinking and judgment. Right? I'm a huge geek for technology history. Right? So this one-time event where people were very worried about AI was when Kasparov got beat by Deep Blue.
DeepMind.
Deep Blue and DeepMind, right? They did Deep Blue, there's not DeepMind yet. And everybody's like, oh my God, we're all doomed, AI is going to replace us all. But I think there was one really important insight that few people have seen. There was actually that even after Deep Blue beat Kasparov, there was this new sport invented, which was called centaur chess. And if you're familiar with centaurs, half horse, half human, centaur chess is basically a human playing together with computers. So you would take the best human chess player, combine them with the best chess computers, and the human would issue judgment, look across them, look at strategies, and make a decision, right? And I think we're in the centaur age of AI, where we need to have judgment, because AI does sometimes incredibly stupid stuff. So I think we need to teach people to deal with this, right? So for kids, I think the important thing is we shouldn't test them on I was tested on dates. So I've spent countless weekends learning random dates. Hopefully nobody does this now anymore, right? And this is the same thing, right? If you give kids access to AI, you just need to change what you test them on, which is critical thinking. I could give them an AI and it comes up with a nonsense answer, and the kid needs to think, how do I figure out which is the truth?
Yeah,
right?
well, I had a student this summer, so I had two cases. So when I was teaching this summer, it's university. These guys are it's their summer. They just want to go party, drink some beer, maybe, work a part-time job. They don't have time to write essays. I knew AI was going to be used in the process. I'd already been at my friend's house watching their 8-year-old use AI in her essay writing. It's out of the box. And I said, okay, well, you're welcome to use AI. In fact, I would like you to use AI because you're going to need to learn to do that. I just want you to cite your prompt, right? So I want to see the critical thinking that goes into it. I want to see how you thought to get there. I want to see how you sort of stitched this together to pull out a really cool essay. And so most of the students did exactly that. there was somebody who I guess maybe felt like too ashamed, or they were rushing to create their essay, and I read it and I was like, man, this is not just like AI supported, this is an entire AI essay because it's really, really bad. And so I talked to the student after school, and she was, yeah, you got me, like that whole thing was AI. I forgot about the assignment and ripped the assignment into ChatGPT before class. This is what it spit out. I handed it in, and you can see these starkly different things. And it actually was really great because it instigated this whole conversation about, you can do that in the classroom. In your worst case scenario, you're going to fail a test, but that's not going to support you in the real world. And so, more than ever, we're going to need to help people understand and help students understand that, like, it's the thinking that matters. Like, I don't really care what the answer is, but that's why your thinking and your critical thinking is important, not only to actually craft something amazing, but also to, like, take what comes out and be like, this is crap, and put it on this side. This is really cool, I'll use it this way. And actually now that allows me to put a new prompt in that makes something more interesting. And so, yeah, I mean, the cat's out of the bag on this one. We're not putting it back in.
Okay, no putting it back in the bag. So we're not so worried about kids, but what about the older generation? The question is, how can we best engage the older generation in learning about AI? Have you seen any great examples of how public education has done this? Jeremy, does your other half look at the older generation, like your parents, grandparents?
At ByteDance, we tend to look at the other spectrum, but this is something that is growing, right? In most societies right now, developed societies, this is a growing problem. Again, I'll go back to voice-enabled interfaces, right? That's where most of humanity is used to interacting. I think there's still a way to go in that space, and I'm extremely optimistic, for developments there. Yeah.
I can give you a personal example.
Please.
So my wife is like Chinese, and my mom doesn't speak English. So I felt for a long time blessed that my mom could not talk to my wife. But technology has profoundly changed that. So now using AI translation technology, they can perfectly talk bad things about me behind my back without me knowing. I had a few years where I was the only translator and go in between, but that is now gone thanks to AI. So that has helped my mom to get access to, again, like the world that she didn't have access to in the past using translation.
Oh, lucky you. Alex, Linda, your Scottish creator, she's not Gen Z.
Oh, no.
What percentage of your community creators are in an older demographic, or is Linda an anomaly?
So when we first launched, it used to be, I would say, millennials mostly. It was like copywriters and stuff building games. Then we started having a couple of published authors or very senior people like Linda, retired. And now we are on a very broad spectrum. On one hand, what AI allowed us to do is to acquire a new set of creators, which are the Gen Z and even some alphas. I mean, we are working now with kids in the UK, which are aged 12 to 16, 17, that are building games because they want to make money. And they were not able to build games before because they didn't have any writing skills. Now they just use ChatGPT. They didn't have any design skills. Now they just use MidJourney, and then it's a very simple platform that we use. So bam, you have new product people as kids. On the other hand, what it allowed the AI was to help people like Linda, who had no design skills, to build much better games. Okay, so she was able to write, to compel a story, but not as immersive as possible. So it totally changed the game for us.
Unfortunately, we're at the end of our panel, but I did want each panelist to take 1 minute to give either a call out, a call to action, a takeaway for the audience to think about. I'd like to start with you, Philipp. A minute on whatever you'd like to communicate.
Yeah, I think my thought that I think is really important is really be courageous and experiment, right? Like, acknowledge all the risks that we have in AI, and we need to definitely be careful. But this is such a new technology that the best way to like fight fear is by building familiarity. Right? Like, so I think what I would encourage everybody here in whatever roles you represent, I mean, definitely experiment with it and learn and feel your way forward. And really like ask yourself like, what is the worst thing that can happen? I can assure you and leave you with like much worse things has happened at Grab, and we've survived. Right? Like we've launched a bunch of AI experiments that didn't go super well, that our PR department definitely doesn't want me to talk about. So I'll leave that for another session. But definitely do bravely experiment and feel your way into the future.
Thank you. Alex.
I would say that I'm a very optimistic person. And I always live in the future in my mind. So for me, it's very crucial to use this technology at its potential and seeing it a friend. For me, AI is a friend, is also a colleague at work. Ever since OpenAI launched, we were in the beta program, and I started saying to my colleagues, we now have a colleague which is like doing multiple jobs in the team. Let's all go to it and use it as much as we can. Of course, you have to learn how to use it. Of course, what you're saying, Lindsey, is super important. You have to have that skill of asking questions. You know, so not anyone can use AI to its capability. You really have to know how to ask questions. So be sure to refine that. Be sure to understand how to discuss better with it, and invest more time in it. And my bet is that it's just going to take our society to a whole new level, which is positive.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, you know, I think for me it's a lot about practicing. You know, practicing your curiosity, most especially. You know, attempting to not be afraid. Grab's made worse mistakes, and they've survived, so you'll survive. But no, really, it's about practice and treating yourself like a world-class athlete, figuring out how you can bring it in to optimize your performance in sort of every aspect of your daily life.
Yeah, I would love to double down on Philipp's quote on experimentation. I in fact want to supercharge that to talk about how we can think about experiments in a faster iteration, right? Cycles are getting shorter and shorter, way shorter right now. It's now really possible to launch micro variations, right? Think about how you can do that at a different pace, because that's really going to benefit your market-driven evolution of your product. Yeah, so that's where I think most designers today should start thinking about. Yeah.
Thank you. Would you all please join me in thanking our panelists today?